That was Anton Karas, the third man. Those photos that you saw in that video are photos of Ukrainians who had collaborated with the Nazis in World War II. We'll be talking about that later on today, and give you uh, a different narrative, because people out there have been bombarded incessantly and relentlessly with a narrative that has absolutely no color to it. It's the same thing every single day, and it's all pro-Ukrainian, anti-Russian, Russian phobia, all of that, as you know. So we have someone on today on this show. Actually, this show was taped the other day at WBAI. And so we're going to play the interview part after I do this little preamble here. We've made a video out of it. Kelly Lane down in North Carolina. We've been working on photos and videos and everything to illustrate what you couldn't see during that interview. So you're going to like this. Some people aren't. I've been getting a lot of heat from a lot of bots out there, and it's over the top. But so Dmitri Polyanskiy is the first deputy permanent representative of Russia to the UN, and he's our guest, and he'll be coming on in a minute. Now, I got to tell you something. I'm out here driving around. I just walked my dog, Sophia, in the park here, and said to Kelly, "Why don't we just take this right now?" So instead, because I can't get to a computer, so if this looks a little awkward, I'm driving around and I'm parked and I'm using data rather than Wi-Fi. So this is a terrific guest. It's a scoop at the WBAI, and I hope you like it. It's a serious matter, folks. We are in an existential juncture right now for the world because of the escalation by NATO and its puppeteers, the U.S. So you're only getting one side, and it's accelerating out of control. And believe me, one nuclear weapon goes off. That's it. That's it. We can say goodbye to everybody, because a lot more will follow. And we need to have some rational minds dealing at the table here. Roger Waters, who has a rational mind, will be briefing the Security Council on February 8th, a couple days from now. So unless somebody blocks him from doing that, but Roger Waters, who has been a lifelong human rights advocate, activist, the great songwriter, activist that he is, he'll be briefing the Security Council at the UN on February 8th. So to set this up, we're going to play Eve of Destruction here, kind of set it up, and we'll be right back and pick up on the interview when it first started at WBAI with Ambassador Polyanskiy.
The Eastern world, it is exploding, violence flaring, bullets loading. You're old enough to kill, but not for voting. You don't believe in war, but what's that gun you're toting? And even the Jordan River has bodies floating, but you tell me over and over and over again, my friend, you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction. Don't you understand what I'm trying to say? Can't you feel the fears I'm feeling today? If the button is pushed, there's no running away. There'll be no one to save with the world in a grave. Take a look around you, boy. It's bound to scare you, boy. And you tell me over and over and over again, my friend, you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction.
So Dmitri Polyanskiy has been the first deputy permanent representative of Russia at the UN, which you've been there now since 2018, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
I came at the beginning of 2018.
Right. And you've had many years I can't believe it, you're a young man, but you've been in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs since, 1993?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I came there in the middle of the turmoil in my country. So It was a very hard choice. Not bringing much money at that time.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you ever think 30 years later that you would be involved, or you'd be, in a situation where we are right now, this critical juncture in terms of the doomsday clock, 90 seconds before midnight? Did you think it would ever devolve to where it is right now?
Well, you know what? It was coming. Everybody was understanding, in my country at least, those who were involved in foreign policy, that it was coming. Because this is everything that we have right now is the direct consequence of the mistakes that the West has committed after the dissolution of the Soviet Union in the 90s. So we saw this coming, but of course nobody was imagining that it would happen at this exact date or this exact year. That would be an over-exaggeration for me to say this. But it was obvious that at some point of time, these Western condescending policies of, I would say, of exceptionalism, of mentorship, they would lead to some situation where we would have to fight for our dignity, for our interests, and that's where we are now.
Right. Well, we'll get back to that. Because there's so much propaganda out there, and there's so much hysteria here in this country. I was in Coney Island the other day and talking. There's a heavy Russian immigrant community out there, and they're like nervous. The people I talk to about the bigotry against Russians, and this is just like 1917 all over again. The portrayal of the people of Russia. Russians don't hate Americans. They may hate our foreign policy. They may hate, not hate, but the way our leaders behave. But the American people, you don't hate. Like, I don't hate the Russian people. I think Russian people are wonderful.
Absolutely. We absolutely don't hate Americans. I have a lot of friends from fellow Americans. They are nice people, and it's a great country. But this country, unfortunately, is behaving at the world arena in a very strange way, in the way that is very bad and harmful for a lot of other countries in the world, including my country. So that's the problem. As for the Americans, for the American heritage, I think we respect it very much. We don't have any problems with American people. It's a very sad situation, of course. It is. We are where we are.
Well, it is sad. When you take a look at how bad it is, the places are banning Stolichnaya. We don't get to hear Tchaikovsky or Rachmaninoff or Rimsky-Korsakov. And there's like this mass hysteria happening right now. Now, when you watch some of these programs, especially on CNN, from the very beginning, we're at the one-year anniversary of CNN replaying the same show every single day, basically. How do you respond to that? It must be very frustrating.
I have one advantage. I don't watch CNN. I think I haven't been watching it for maybe 10 years or so. And I stopped to watch other mass media 1 year ago. There were some which I used to keep an eye on to get some objective information from different sources. But now it's really hard to see what's happening. Not only the U.S. media, I think international media as well. You look at what has happened to the BBC, to Euronews. They are all Russophobic and anti-Russian. And that's terrible. I will tell you that today, for example, I noticed on the web that one of state French TV station organized a roundtable on how to better resettle population from Crimea to eradicate pro-Russian sentiments. Can you imagine this? It's a kind of promotion of ethnic cleansing by state TV in France. And they were discussing it just very seriously, what to do, because there are too many Russians on the peninsula, and of course they will support Putin, they will support Russia. Incredible. A lot of things of trying to cancel Russian culture. I can't imagine how this can happen, because it's our own cultural heritage of everybody. I don't know. It's like cutting an arm to a person if we say that you can't read Tolstoy and Dostoevsky and listen to Tchaikovsky anymore. In the same way, if somebody were told in Russia not to read French authors, not to read American authors, Steinbeck, Salinger, I don't know, Hemingway, that would be really robbery of the society, robbery of human being, of not being allowed to these interesting pieces and important pieces of heritage. So this is, of course, very deplorable, and I have the impression that people have gone mad at some locations. Again, I can tell you that that's something that I read at the internet, today, that there is such a deputy of European Parliament, Mrs. Anna Fatiga. She's quite notorious, and she wrote an article in Euractiv, and I will give you a quote from this article. There are no such things as Russian gas, oil, aluminium, coal, uranium, diamonds, grain, forests, gold, etc. All such reserves are Tatar, Bashkir, Siberian, Karelian, etc. We should discuss the prospects for the creation of free and independent states in the post-Russian space. And these discussions of this type is being organized in the European Parliament. So how on earth can we react to this? We see that there is a big drive of Russophobia, of hatred, that people want to cancel Russian culture, to inflict damage to us. So how can we react? How would you imagine we should act in our shoes?
Well, one of the things they're trying to eliminate is Russia's, the Soviet Union at the time, liberation of Auschwitz. It was the Russians that liberated Auschwitz. And remember Auschwitz, before they started killing Jews in Auschwitz and Poles, they were killing Russian soldiers. That was they were the first experiments with gas for Russian soldiers. And this is in 1942. I mean, it's really a slap in the face that Russia not only liberated Auschwitz, but they documented it, sent it to the West, and the West wouldn't publish it. The Western allies, the Brits and the U.S. wouldn't publish what you discovered at these concentration camps.
That's really disgusting. I have a very personal feeling about this, because I served for 3 years in Poland, and I was invited, and my ambassador was invited every time on the 27th of January to mark this tragic event. And of course, you felt very badly there, but it was necessary, and there were a lot of people who were paying tribute to those who were killed there, and also paying tribute to the Red Army, which, as you rightfully said, liberated Auschwitz. And this time we were not invited officially. It was a demonstrative act, and this is a slap on the face, of course, but this is a big humiliation for Poland, I think, for the whole Western society. Because what's happening now in terms of rewriting the history of the Second World War is really terrible. It's very damaging for the whole world. And I can tell you, for example, that also there is another 2 anniversaries that are worth mentioning in our program. On the 27th of January, we do not only mark the International Holocaust Day, but there were 80 years of liberation of Leningrad, of the siege. So the siege was ended on the 27th of January, and tomorrow we celebrate the 80th anniversary of the great Stalingrad battle, which was also a turning point in the Second World War. And I'm absolutely sure that there will be a lot of nasty bad words about Russia, about Soviet Union, about Soviet people during these anniversaries in the West and in the US. And this is very bad. We see very disturbing trends, like your country has been constantly voting against the resolution, the draft resolution in the General Assembly that is tabled by Russia. This resolution is about fight with glorification of Nazism, and the United States, together with Ukraine, were voting for maybe, I think, 8 or 10 years consistently against this resolution. The only two countries who were against. But this year, also European countries, the members of the EU, voted against this resolution. So it made Germany, Japan, Italy vote against resolution that forbids glorification of Nazism. Can you imagine the symbolism of this event, and how can we feel in such circumstances? We of course think that there is a process of rewriting history, a process of diminishing the role of my country, which lost 27 million people liberating the world from Nazism.
Right. It's absolutely true. I mean, that's really a conservative figure, 27 million. I've heard it's even higher. I have Russian friends who say it's
a very conservative figure.
Could be up to 40 million people. You can't find anyone in Russia that doesn't have a relative that was killed by the Nazis, and Stalingrad and all the way through Europe was liberated by the Soviet Union. I mean, there's no question about it. The U.S.
That's a fact of life, yeah.
U.S., Canada, and the Brits landed on June 6, 1944 at Normandy, but it came in from the west to the east. But Russia, Soviet Union, did it alone all the way to Berlin. There was no help at all. So we should be glorifying Russia for what they did to save the world from Nazism. And I'm probably going to be tarred and feathered by people in red and blue flags outside when I leave here, but that's my opinion. And going back to...
Thank you.
Huh?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's very important that you said it, but I want to say that the credit goes not only to Russia, today's Russia, it was Soviet Union, Soviet people. The credit goes to Ukraine, to Belarus, to Uzbekistan, to Kazakhstan, to all the others. They were fighting together and they were bringing the victory closer. That's why it's so sad for us to see what's happening with our neighbors in terms of glorification of Nazism.
Let's go back to Leningrad, because you said January 27th. It was a 2-year, 4-month, and 2 weeks and 5-day siege, 883 days, I believe, of Leningrad that started in September of 41. And at least a million people died there. And this was the Nazi group North and the Finnish government that participated in this genocide of that city. And so it is an important day. And I didn't hear anybody in the West talking about it the other day in media. Not that I'm like you. I don't watch MSNBC and CNN anymore. Otherwise, I'd start drinking again. So, it's one way that will drive you crazy, and maybe only a drink would bail you out. So you have that. Now, I want Shostakovich. So we have the Shostakovich. Now I can't play the whole Seventh Symphony, but I can't. But I have something else. This beautiful music. I play it every week. This is not a sop to you. This is I'm doing this because I play this every week. I'm going to play just some of this. How beautiful the music is. Shostakovich. Listen to this. That is not from the Seventh Symphony, but there's a story about the Seventh Symphony. Shostakovich began writing it in Leningrad, and then he moved, I think it was Samara? Hello?
Yes, it was Samara and Kuybyshev this time.
Right, but it was the... He played it the second time in Leningrad to show you the resolve of the Russian people, or the Soviet people in Leningrad.
Yeah, it was performed in March 1942, and it was really very important to make it heard from Leningrad. And there is a movie right now. I don't think that the American public knows about it, but there is a movie commemorating the deeds of the musicians who were assembling under the shelling, under all the problems that they had in Leningrad, and rehearsing this Seventh Symphony, and they performed it, and the whole world heard music from Leningrad, and the Germans that were claiming that the city is already surrendering. They understood that the city is resisting. So that's incredibly important landmark in our history.
Right. I want to now talk about another thing that's being rewritten, and that is Ukraine's participation and collaboration with the Third Reich back then. You cannot deny it. You cannot deny that there was a group called the Nightingale Battalion, and in fact, here in this state, they have statues of two of the leaders of that battalion up in Ellenville, New York, at what's called the Heroes Park. One is Stepan Bandera. The other one is called Roman
Shukhevich.
Yes.
Shukhevich.
Tell us about that battalion, and what they did, and why are they being celebrated? Not only in here, I think in Kiev.
Well, I think that you're absolutely right. There are a lot of examples of heroization of Nazism, and Stefan Bandera and Roman Shukhevich are the most notorious leaders of Ukrainian nationalists that collaborated with Nazism. In fact, they had the opinion or the hope that the Nazis that invaded the Soviet Union will help them to establish an independent Ukrainian country, Ukrainian Republic. But that, of course, were not the plans of the Nazis. They used these formations heavily for suppressing the local population. So these Nightingale combatants and the Galiciana division and many others formations, they are responsible for mass acts of genocide against Poles, against Russians, against Ukrainians and Jews, of course. So this is absolutely fact of life, and there are a lot of monuments that are unfortunately being erected now in Ukraine in commemoration of lower combatants of these detachments. But Stepan Bandera is a national hero of Ukraine, and he has been national hero for 10 years already. And of course, this is something that the residents of the east and south of the Ukraine do not like. They can't accept that somebody who came together with Hitler and who was responsible for murder of thousands, of hundreds of thousands, even of innocent civilians, is being being treated as a hero in their country, and this treatment is being imposed on them as the only way they should treat the history of the Second World War. So this created a lot of problems in Ukraine. And after 2014, after the illegal Maidan coup, anti-constitutional coup, which was supported by Western countries, including the US, this trend has become very clear, and that was the basic point, the starting point of all the problems of today's Ukraine that we're seeing right now.
Right. We are talking with Dmitri Polyanskiy, who is the first deputy permanent representative of Russia at the UN. How do you get along with the people in the UN, particularly those who are part of the aggression that are those nations that support giving arms, unlimited arms, tanks, HIMARS, and everything else? Do you talk to them at all?
Absolutely, we do talk. You should distinguish between something that you would see on the screens, between open meetings of Security Council and General Assembly, where people are just announcing their national positions, and something that we have in the couloirs, where we are all communicating connecting with each other and discussing different things. So we are normally speaking with them. Of course, they avoid being seen with us in public. There might be some problems for them if somebody would rat on them, saying that they are dealing with Russian diplomats. But they respect us and we respect them as professionals. I would say that there are a lot of colleagues who approached us and they were openly saying that they have big doubts about what Western countries are now doing in terms of arms deliveries to Ukraine, because it's absolutely clear to everybody that this is pouring gas into the fire, and you can't stop any conflict with acts like this. And we see that these efforts are intensifying, and it brings us very close to quite potentially serious developments for the whole humanity, which we in Russia, for example, would be very keen to avoid.
Right. Well, we all would like to see that avoided. And we all would like to see it avoided, and the delivery of German tanks and the promised delivery of these Abrams tanks to Ukraine. And now they're pressing South Korea to send tanks. This is a very dangerous move. Is there any escape of an escalation that could lead to something that could end the planet?
Well, of course, this is a dangerous move, but the fate of all this weaponry would be the same as the fate of the weaponry that has been already delivered to Ukraine by Western countries from the beginning of our special military operation. I saw the statistics from our Ministry of Defense recently. So as far as tanks are concerned, there are 7,500 tanks, more or less, Ukrainian tanks destroyed by Russia from the beginning of the special military operation. So we're speaking about 200, 300 tanks, I think. That, of course, won't change very much the dynamics and the fate of the Kiev regime. But of course, it will add to the sufferings of the people of Ukraine. It will, their leadership will continue to use the conscripts as cannon fodder, and it will bring new immense tragedies to common Ukrainians. And I think that the Western countries that are speaking about new weapons to Ukraine should render counter of this wholly and utterly.
Well, Americans don't want to see war. They are trying to get the public behind an escalation of this. But there is a huge, pro-Nazi presence. I'm not saying all. I'm not saying the entire Ukrainian army is, but there is that element there. And there are hit lists. I have a lot of my friends who are on this hit list. Can you talk about the hit list on people that speak out against the official narrative that they're giving?
Yeah, this hit list is called Mirotvorets. It has been created after the Maidan coup. So it was launched after the Maidan coup in 2014, and there were a lot of quite notorious opposition figures killed being on this list. Like, for example, Oles Buzina in 2015. Or 14, I don't remember exactly the dates, he was killed. And there were a lot of others. Quite recently, it's Daria Dugina, who was killed, a Russian philosopher. And there are also, what is extremely disturbing, there are a lot of minors on this list. So we discovered, our NGOs discovered that there are about 300. So there are a lot of minors there, and we tried to attract attention to this absolutely shameful situation of international organizations, including United Nations, of course, United States and other Western countries, but they just pretend that nothing is happening, that it's okay to dox the minors online. In terms of Russian minors, maybe it's okay, or Ukrainian minors. I don't know how it is treated if US minors were treated in the same way online. in this country. I assume that there would be some consequences. But in terms of Ukraine, there are no consequences. There is a blank check for anything that the Kiev regime is doing. And really, that's very deplorable.
Who do you think's pulling the strings? You think President Zelensky is pulling the strings? And by the way, he got a big audience here. He gets a big audience here. He goes before Congress. He's on all of these television shows.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, now I can hear.
Okay. I'm talking about...
You were asking who is pulling the strings.
You're pulling the strings of Zelensky. I mean, is it NATO? Is it the U.S.? Is it the U.K.? There's been this orchestrated attempt to demean the image of Russia, and it's been going on for years here. First it was with Russiagate, and then my friend who used to be the ambassador to Uzbekistan, Craig Murray, was able to debunk this whole Skripal affair and the Novichok or whatever that Theresa May was screaming about, and just constantly looking to demean the Soviet people and their government.
Yeah, you're right. There is a absolutely clear a big bubble of lie around Russia. This bubble was started to be inflated, I think, about 10 years ago. But most visibly, it was done during this infamous Skripal case, and then Novichok. But we should also add the MH17 to this picture, which happened before. All these things, all these efforts to portray Russia accountable without due trial, and this is absolutely a trend. And absolutely, when you ask who is pulling the strings, well, it's clear that it's not the Zelensky regime which is pulling the strings, and I think that the U.S. administration has repeatedly acknowledged the fact that they were pouring money in Ukraine, and let's not forget about current President Biden boasting that he was responsible for firing Prosecutor General in Ukraine, just like spreading a word about it, and all other examples. We saw it when we were in March very close to agreeing on some kind of a treaty, of peace treaty with the Kiev regime. That would stop the hostilities, and that would allow us to fulfill the aims of our special military operation through diplomacy. And Ukrainians themselves, they proposed to us certain things, but then they withdrew it after there was an intervention from the UK and the US. It was quite obvious that these two countries were not interested in stopping the war because of their military-industrial complex, because of all the profits that they are making on blood. And that's was absolutely clear indicator for us that the Kiev regime is only implementing the will of its Western puppeteers. That's the situation.
They say a lot of these weapons end up on the black market. Do you have evidence of that? I mean, do you believe that?
That's true. We brought this information to Security Council repeatedly. There are clear indications that these weapons are being sold elsewhere. And if I remember correctly, the Nigerian president, Mr. Buhari, recently said that the main source of weapons coming to Sahel region now is from Ukraine. And this is a very bad trend, of course. I can imagine how many bad things the weapons smuggled through Ukraine could do in the whole of the world.
Right. If they get their hands on a nuclear weapon or anything, I don't know. They got some weapons that could a small group could use to inflict a lot of damage. What can be done at this point? I mean, what can be done to avoid exacerbating the situation. I mean, what can the U.S. can the American public put some pressure on the U.S.? Look, do you know how many homeless people live in this country? I just came here from Manhattan into Brooklyn, and there's like hundreds of people living in the subway, and there's 100,000 homeless women and children in New York. They're all over D.C. I mean, people would rather see that money spent on housing these women and children, clothing them, educating them, do that rather than exacerbate and promote what could be, an existential end to this crisis.
Well, I'm a humble Russian diplomat, and of course I'm far from giving advice to this country how to spend money. But I will not speak about internal situation where the money could be spent better. But I can say, for example, that if we calculate the U.S. Total aid to Ukraine now is about 22 billion, I think, 25 billion. The total military aid to Ukraine is now about 100 billion. Up to this moment, it's very roughly, and I may be mistaken, but that's what I have in my head. And the whole UN budget, excluding peacekeeping operations, is about 4.4 billion, and peacekeeping operations is also 10 something. So, can you imagine how many good things could have been done with this money? And in other situations, like helping Yemen, like helping Syria, like helping some other countries in need, African countries, the Western countries say that we don't have money, we're short of money. But when it comes to Ukraine, to supplying arms of Ukraine, which is kind of commercial enterprise, it's not humanitarian assistance, commercial enterprise, because US and British and some European companies are really making profits on this war. So they are continuing to invest in Ukrainian crisis. Let's put it this way. What can be done now? Well, you should recall the goals of our special military operation from the outset, and you should also bear in mind why did we start this special military operation? It was a hard decision. Of course, it was not our choice. It's not a war of choice, as our former American partners try to say to claim in the Security Council. We were facing this hornet's nest at our borders, which was created by the US and its allies. It was not only threatening Russia directly, but it was continuously shelling the residents of Donbass, of eastern Ukraine, shelling the people who only wanted equality, who only wanted to speak Russian, to continue to speak Russian, to continue to teach Russian to their children, and to continue to honor the real heroes of the Second World War and not the Nazi criminals that are being glorified now by Ukraine. That was very simple. And instead of engaging in dialogue with these people, the Ukrainian regime, the Maidan regime, started to shell them and to kill them. You know that the figure of people killed in the east of Ukraine through 8 years was about 14,000 people. And only from beginning of this special military operation, from the moment when the hostilities intensified and the shellings intensified, it's about 5,000 people, civilians, who were killed by Ukrainian shellings. These are the data from Donetsk and Lugansk that I'm using. And this is, of course, horrible. So we need to, and we started our special military operation. We intervened first and foremost to save these people from the real genocide that they were facing from Ukrainian army. So we can't stop without achieving this task. We can't stop without seeing that the human rights and the rights of Russian speakers in Ukraine are being respected in the same way that they are respected elsewhere. Can you imagine, for example, that in Canada, the French Canadians say that they take power and they say that nobody can speak English in this country. And then they start shelling, I don't know, what, Ottawa and Toronto, and what would be the perception in the US of this whole thing. So that's the same that we're feeling right now. Why people in Belgium can speak French and Flemish without any problem? Why people in Switzerland can speak German, French, Italian, and nobody sees any problem in this? Why is it so problematic for Ukrainian leadership to accept that most of the people of this country speak Russian, and this is not a threat to their sovereignty, this is not a threat to their state, this is a fact of life and they need to accept it. Right. So there are certain things that we need to put on paper, to agree on, and I think that this crisis, provided there is a will from Washington, can be solved. And I think that and from London, but mostly from Washington. If there is a will from Washington, this crisis can be stopped very, very quickly. Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to give exact figures, but of course the strings are being pulled from Washington. There is no doubt about it.
Well, you mentioned the military-industrial complex. They certainly are raking in a lot of dough on this entire affair. And speaking of languages, you speak 5 different languages, at least 5 different languages yourself.
I speak them equally badly.
All right. Well, most Americans speak one language badly. All right. we are. I'm going to get hammered when this one's over. Dmitri, I want to talk about your life. It's changed over the last 5 years. I mean, are you able to go to restaurants here? Do you have to have security around you at all times? Are there threats on your life?
No, I don't think that we came to this stage yet. I don't feel any hostility, frankly, to me when I travel and when I see people in New York or in Long Island, where I spend a lot of time. But in terms of, well, first of all, you should bear in mind that we have very, very little free time.
Yeah, I know that.
Almost none. And we try to use it, of course, for some things that are very dear to us, but it's not the same rhythm of life that I used to have anywhere, because it's very, very time consuming, and it takes a lot of efforts from our side, from the whole of our team and myself, to pace up with what we are having in the UN. But another thing is that we have a lot of personal limitations imposed by U.S. authorities. We have this 25 miles zone limit where we can travel, and in order to travel further, we need to get authorization, and this was imposed on us long ago, but it was hardened. The conditions were harshened about 2 months ago. So we now need authorization, including myself, to go anywhere, to travel. And we don't get this authorization. So most of my colleagues, they were refused to spend a weekend somewhere outside of New York. We can't, for example, invite our relatives. I don't know why, but the State Department is treating our mission to the UN in a very specific way. So we are not allowed for 3 years already to invite our relatives. So I have a daughter in Russia who is very eager to come and see me, but she can't get a visa because the State Department says that you are not allowed to without any explanation. This, of course, bears a very sad imprint on our life here, and we don't feel free in terms of spending time. But, well, again, as far as I am concerned, I spend most time in the UN and in my office dealing with the UN. But our relatives who are here, they're a bit sad about this, of course, because this is all very, very unnecessary. And this is being the policy of the host country, which is totally contrary to its obligations under the host country agreement with the UN. And we are raising this issue, but not to a larger scale so far.
All right, we are speaking with Dmitri Polyanskiy, not to be confused with the triathlete, the world-renowned
yes.
triathlete. Do you ever get confused for him?
I like sports, but not to that extent.
All right, that's a lot of work, and you got to be 20 years old for that. I want to talk about the sanctions. The sanctions. I mean, you hear, if you listen to these television shows and these talking heads, they will say that the people in Moscow and St. Petersburg are starving and there's no work and all of that. And so tell what's really going on? Are people being misled by that? Because you hear other side to that things are okay.
Well, I don't know how to choose the word which would be polite enough to describe all this nonsense. There are a lot of words that come into my head, but I don't think that they are decent to be pronounced in our show. But well, frankly, this is not what's happening. in Russia. I think we are very well prepared to these sanctions, and you don't see any changes, any visible changes in the way we live in Russia, in the way the common Russians live, in the shops, in the businesses. And I heard, I may be mistaken, but I think it was yesterday that the International Monetary Fund is expecting the growth of Russian economy in 2023 for 0.3%. It's a growth. It's not a decline. It's not a tragic situation, economic situation that was forecast by many. As a fact of life, the side that has suffered most of the sanctions is the European Union and European countries. I think Germany is mostly affected by these issues, because it's an open secret that the United States and its geopolitical exercises was targeting Germany and European Union as much as it was targeting Russia. I think everybody understands this, but only the Germans are behaving in a way that nothing is happening. But well, it's quite clear with all these things, with Nord Stream, with all these things that now they will be buying liquefied gas from the US and other sources, which is very unreliable situation. Of course, Germany is losing, and the European countries are losing, and that's visible. A lot of people are complaining about the things that are happening in Europe. But in terms of Russia, economically, I don't think that there are problems that we face. We have become much more self-reliable after 2014, when there were sanctions imposed on us after the reunification of Crimea with Russia. So I don't think that it really matters very much to us. We are ready to withstand the sanctions for as long as it takes, because we understand what's at stake. And it's really now that the countries, a lot of Western countries, are clearly pronouncing the aim of destroying Russia, of destroying Russian culture, of destroying Russian civilization. I recall this Anna Fatiga's statement about the fact that there are no such things as Russian gas, etc. So we see that there are a lot of enemies who want to do away with Russia, and we understand why we are doing this. We understand what are the aims, and we are ready to go forward and to achieve the situation when my country will be able to live in the way it wants to live, in a very friendly and neighborly way with all the other countries, without any domination, without any mentorship, without any condescending rhetoric and exceptionalism, which is the trait of U.S. Foreign policy for many years. And I think that this moment will come inevitably, whether the United States wants it or not. And we are raising this issue in the United Nations, that we need now to build the truly multipolar system that would include Russia, would include China, would include India, Brazil, the others, United States, why not Europe. But it's a new model of cooperation, but I don't think that it's much to the liking of people in Washington or London or elsewhere. But, well, we will have to work with them.
You have to work with them. We got to get out of this mess. Going back, that the will of the Russian people, all you have to do is read Tolstoy, War and Peace, 1812, the invasion of Russia in Moscow, General Kutuzov retreating and coming back, and then they would not be beat by the French. And then in 1941, Operation Barbarossa, Germans thought they were going to go in there and win it a couple of days, but 4 years later, they were all the way back to Berlin. So the Russian people are strong people, proud people, and we need to realize that. We have to recognize that and get on a peace path, not a war path, because, it's the end of the planet. The Russians aren't going to fold their tent. And we have just a few minutes left here. I did want to ask you, because I saw this on your Twitter account, that you are a dog lover, because I'm a dog lover.
Oh, Yes, I'm a big dog lover and I love dogs. I like all the animals, by the way, because animals are much better than people, I think.
That's what I say every
Frankly.
day. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So dogs are incredibly nice, and I enjoy very much dealing with them. I enjoy dealing with cats as well, but I don't understand them as well as dogs, and that's my problem maybe. But I really, from being a child, I couldn't tolerate a situation when somebody would offend or try to make pain to a dog, to a kitten, and that would really that could trigger some forceful action from me. That's the only, I think, situation where I could use my fists when I was a boy. But really, I can't tolerate cruelty towards animals, and that's why I spend a lot of time with my dog. It's a Dachshund, a long-haired Dachshund, and I love him incredibly. His name is Chewbacca. And Chewbacca. He's a good companion, and he has a nice character.
Dachshund.
Dachshund, yes.
Dachshund, yes. I had one when I was a kid. Now I have a Coton Touliard that is with my friend. My best friend is watching that Coton right now. It's a shared dog, but that's great. So, any last words here? We have. When we play you out, we're going to play another piece by Shostakovich, I think, or maybe we'll play something else. But any last words that to this audience and to the American people? Because I know I'm being monitored, but the floor is yours for the next couple of minutes.
Thank you very much. Well, maybe I would like to say that please don't believe those who say that Russia wants to do away with Ukraine, Russia wants to kill Ukrainian people, and Russia wants to destroy Ukrainian culture. That's not true. We never proclaimed these aims of our special military operation. We want to live in peace with Ukraine. We respect Ukrainians. We acknowledge their independence. And we still remain friends. I think maybe it would be a surprise for the audience, but according to the UN data, about 3 million Ukrainians found refuge in Russia after February 24 last year. It's twice as much as Poland and 3 times as much as Germany. And to go together with those who fled Donbass since 2014, it's about 5 million people, 5 million Ukrainians living in people from Ukraine living in Russia. And we will be, I'm sure we will be friends. I'm sure that all those who are brainwashed, who were fed the propaganda of the Kiev regime from 2014, I think they will have their eyes open, and then they will understand how their country was used in a geopolitical game of US and its allies against Russia. And I think that you shouldn't worry about us and Ukrainians. We will be okay, but you should also worry about your own countries and what they are doing and how they are behaving in our very, very fragile world of today.
Well, I look forward to at some point you and I can sit down, have a big bowl of Russian plov. I've had the Uzbek plov, but the Russian plov.
I do it myself. It's very nice.
You make your own plov.
Yeah.
My friend Craig Murray's wife made it for me, the former ambassador to Uzbekistan.
Looking forward to it.
All right, and a non-alcoholic bottle of Stoli Snaya. All right.
Does it exist, non-alcoholic?
No. I'm just,
only have a hangover. Yeah, but
all right. We're going to go out here. You can listen, and we'll. This is another piece by Shostakovich. It's not as sweet. I forgot what it is, but we're going to go out with this. And I thank you once again, Ambassador, and I hope everything works out for you and the U.S. and we have a better end to this mess. See you later.
Thank you very much. The pleasure was mine. Thank you.
Bye. Randy Credico live on the fly, Assange Countdown to Freedom. And before we go, I just would like you to know that the Assange Countdown to Freedom program has been put on hiatus. We've been doing it for 7 years, and we are trying to raise money to continue it. And I never ask, I don't like to ask for support, but if you could support this program, you can donate at AssangeCountdownToFreedom.com. That's AssangeCountdownToFreedom.com. Spell the whole thing out, or RandyCredico.com. So I want to thank everybody who's been involved in this program over the last 6-7 years. There's a lot of people involved, and I want to thank especially Kelly Lane, who's been the engineer and editor for the past 3 years. That's it. Please support it, and we hope to be back in action as soon as possible so we can continue to provide the kind of programming you just saw. I'm Randy Credico for Randy Credico Live on the Fly, Assange Countdown to Freedom. We're going to go out with Leonard Cohen here. This is the Partisan. See you.
When they poured across the border, I was cautioned to surrender. This I could not do. I took my gun and vanished. I have changed my name so often. I've lost my wife and children, but I've many friends. And some of them are with me. An old woman gave us shelter, kept us hidden in the garret. Then the soldiers came. She died without a whisper. There were 3 of us this morning. I'm the only one this evening, but I must go on. The frontiers are my prison. Oh, the wind is blowing. Through the graves the wind is blowing. Freedom soon will come. Then we'll come from shadow.
Les amants étaient chez moi. Ils me dirent resigne-toi, mais je n'ai pas peur. J'ai repris mon âme. J'ai changé 100 fois de nom. J'ai quelques femmes et enfants, mais j'ai tant d'amis. J'ai la France entière. Un vieil homme dans un grenier, pour la nuit nous a cachés. Les Allemands l'ont pris. Il est mort sans surprise.
Oh, the wind is blowing. Through the graves the wind is blowing. Freedom soon will come. Then we'll come from the shadow.